Hi everyone, I'm Katie Buttaro. So happy to be here with you all. I am, as Gordon said, a solutions consultant. So for those of you who might not have met with one of us or you're in the process of talking to one of us, we work alongside the sales team to give the more, I like to say, like product angle of things, and really kind of move the questions along with anything to do specifically with your needs. And we all come from kind of a background that we're able to kind of give that consulting service. So for me, by way of background, I've been at AppZen for 3 years. I actually started in implementation because prior to coming to AppZen, for 8 years I worked in implementation, first at Concur, and then I went to Chrome River and Burst. So I've been on that other side of the table, implementing for people like yourselves, going through those 2-year implementations, really digging deep into how we're going to do the policies in those. So I have that background. And prior to that, I actually worked in higher ed at Georgetown University, followed by Harvard Medical School. So just that's kind of the trajectory of my path, which, you know, my last stop in the expense management world was at Chrome River, and they started to also start implementing AppZen. And really the thing is AppZen's tool was doing things that me as an implementation person and you who've probably worked with implementation people, we just really couldn't solve for, right? And so how do we, how can we use this technology today? And it was really hard. So that was what brought me to AppZen. So it's kind of good to give some background to kind of contextualize today, because I want to make sure today is also just an open forum. I know that the benefit of me being towards the end of the day is that I've had a chance to talk to some of you, heard what the buzz is around, and kind of gotten a gist of what people are here to hear about and what's really resonating. And so I hope to kind of weave that into this topic as well. So just to get started, I really want to set the stage for what are the challenges, both, of course, in shared service centers, but even if you have a company that you don't necessarily have a specified shared service centers, the same challenges, I believe, exist across the board, across industries, right? And thinking about what you've heard today, I really want to hear from you all and to hear, have you all share kind of what the challenges are for you all. My goal is to get you to now leave this room and start thinking about, yes, these are our challenges, and then how can we use AI? How can we use AppZen to kind of help with these challenges, which I've already kind of heard the buzz about in the hallway, which is great. So, setting the stage, this Sandy Khanna, who's the VP of Financial Service at Mars, recently wrote an article kind of saying that one of the biggest challenges, and I spoke to some of you today about this, is just truly understanding what is AI and having leaders buy into it. And I think whether it's embarrassment or just lack of knowledge, people just don't really truly know how they can use AI. So one of the biggest challenges is getting over that hump. We were recently at the Gartner conference in DC, and we kept receiving that same feedback where one of our biggest challenges is educating on AI and how can we use it and why it's worth investing. Similarly, investment, right? We spend all this money today already on our shared service centers. We spend all this money today on our accounting offices, on our auditing offices. Why should we invest in something like AI, right? And so you all are here, you're invested to move this along in your company. How do we kind of get that buy-in, right? Does this resonate with anyone in the room so far? Yeah, okay. I see some smiles and nods. And then finally, I always just like to talk about talent. It's constantly something we're hearing. And I should mention, when we join calls as solutions consultants in the fields, this is the type of things we're hearing. How can you help us with X? We're losing employees. Our employees are unsatisfied with the way we're, for example, doing audit. Everything's manual. How can this help, right? And you want to be the company that's in the future, right, or thinking about the future. I don't know about you all, but back in when I worked at Georgetown, part of one of my jobs was taking receipts, putting them on a piece of paper, putting it on the copy machine, scanning it in, getting it to my boss, right? So if we stayed in that world, no one would ever stay with the company. And of course, that was years ago, but still, you have to think about that when we think about AI and when we try to think about that first challenge. How do we convince? How do we teach people that AI is necessary and is helpful? And one of our goals at AppZen is to just kind of educate you as well as how AI can enable you to do the work you do today even more efficiently, more cost effectively. So these are just kind of 3 challenges that always come up consistently across the board. But I'm curious, what did I not scope out that you see as a challenge when you think about bringing this type of software or some types of AI to your workplace, or especially to companies who have a grander shared service center and you're trying to think about how to really move it up technologically? Yeah?
Being able to justify ROI.
Yep, certainly, certainly, and that's a lot of it, right? So why bring this software in? You know, how is it going to help, right? And we're going to get to that where we think about using more efficiently the employees you have today. They can now do other things because AI can help with that. That's a great one. Anything else?
I thought it is, we're talking about the idea of selling AI to the other people in the company. And one question for me is, how do we sell it to internal audits, and if this can achieve the completeness and accuracy that they're going to be looking for?
Right. I mean, that's a great challenge, right? And I think a lot of times what happens with that is, you know, when we get on the calls with people trying to flesh out, like, well, is it that again, that first challenge, is it that they're scared of the AI? Is it that they don't understand how it's going to help them? Are they afraid potentially that when they hear about this, they're going to lose their job? And I really try to emphasize, no, it's not that. It's making people's lives more efficient, right? So when we think about these multilingual companies, we think about different rules across different entities across the globe. The goal is obviously for you all to centralize that, right? To make it a central process that's easy for everyone to understand. And I think that's the angle that I always recommend taking is, you know, it's gonna make your life easier. And one of our goals just in general at AppZen is not only to delight the employees getting paid faster, or, you know, their invoices being processed faster, but it's also to delight the people using AppZen, right? The user interface is going to make it easier for them to, for example, an expense audit, to hone in on those needles in the haystack, right? We want to make sure that everything that, you know, the tools they're using, that you want to make sure your employees are happy with that as well. So that's really what we try to emphasize. And I think we get that feedback a lot, right? Well, this fear of the unknown, this fear of AI taking over our jobs type of thing. I think it's more, you know, we really try to push it's going to just enable them even more. Now, of course, over time, natural attrition might happen, but for the people in the workforce, I think it's an add-on benefit. And then just moving forward, you know, thinking about current state. Some of these might look a little familiar to all, maybe all too familiar to you all, but you know, things like manual data extraction entry from multiple processes, right? How do we bring that together? And what's happening in X country is different than what's happening in that other country. Does that sound kind of familiar to you all? And then we think about languages. It's nearly impossible to have a few auditors who speak over 35 languages. Here at AppZen, we have a language overlay in our expense product that translates every single expense that comes in regardless of language, right? And so, you know, how do we think about bringing those together? Fighting to keep up with compliance changes, right? We activate and change in real time with you. So thinking about things like that. Anything else that's going on in the current state today in your shared service centers? I'm curious, you know, we hear some feedback of these types of challenges, but what's going on today that really kind of prohibits you all from maybe moving the needle forward in your company? Anything in particular? No? Oh, so everyone's good.
I mean, just for us, and we're kind of in the middle of a proof of concept
Yeah.
right now anyway, but I think the challenges that I don't even know if they're challenges, but just things that we've got to solve for.
Yeah.
It's just all the GL coding that's possible in our system.
Yep.
The fact that our invoices can come in all kinds of different formats. We might get one email that's got 12 different PDF attachments for 12 different invoices. We may get one PDF that's got 20 invoices all chained together in a single document. So just being able to decipher that. And sometimes we get invoices that don't even have an invoice number on them. So
how are you handling that today?
Usually the users will, and we're very decentralized, so we've got 40,000 field users who all can put in invoices, and so usually they'll pick like an account number or something from the invoice, and they'll kind of make up their own invoice number, quite frankly.
Okay.
So, and yes, that does lead to duplicate payment issues and other things too, but we've got detective controls for that. So,
right.
So.
But that extra detective control is yet another step that someone has to do. And,
yeah.
Right.
But those are our challenges: the GL coding, the fact that invoices can come in all different formats.
Yep.
Just all. So.
Yeah. And so you're going through an AP POC here at AppZen.
Right.
Great. Yeah. Great. Anything else from anyone? Because that kind of leads into when we're thinking about future state, something you just said resonated with what I'm going to talk about, but I can kind of skip ahead. When we think about, well, how are we going to now use this AI? How can we utilize these tools to actually help solve for things that you probably haven't even thought about? But if I keep probing and ask, how many manual steps today are happening, right? That's where the AI technology really can step in and help to centralize these processes across your company. And so again, we want to become the enabler for any of these processes. So thinking about AP Inbox, I'm sure you've heard about that today, but that is one of those tools that is going to help those steps. So when you think about, well, how do we sell this to our how do we sell this to our team, like you just mentioned, right? Like that's part of one of the real big challenges. Well, now they can have this one central inbox to really use and help centralize and help organize those types of queries. And so all the queries now are coming into one central place, and we're able to auto forward certain ones about W-9s. Think about all the work that you're doing today, even as simple as opening up an inbox, opening up an email, and deciding how to move that email. That's all now can be automated, and that's all using AI, using our generative AI technology, right? So those are just some things that come to mind. And then, even if you don't have, like I said, even if you don't have a shared service center, and even if you don't have a global reach, this type of technology is going to help. Let's say you have 2 employees, but your numbers are growing. This is going to help enable those types of people to really manage all parts of invoicing across the board or expense auditing across the board. So when we think about future state, I certainly want to hear from anyone in the room who's actually using AppZen. We already kind of talked about Inbox, but how can we make your life more efficient? And this is something I feel like I'm constantly talking about, even today already a little bit, right? Talking about how we can make life more efficient. And I always like to use the term forensic as well. A lot of people we talk to, they're coming to us, they have all this manual processes, and they're kind of taking things as they come, and it's overwhelming. Let's shift that and make it more of a forensic audit, right? Where for expense audit, we are narrowing it down. We're going to narrow down those high-risk things, bring those needles out of the haystack, so then your auditors can be more forensic auditors. And so they bring the actual problems, they're not searching for them, right? Because if you search for them, all that time spent searching could be much better spent looking at those high-risk ones, right? So thinking about things that make your life more efficient. If any of you attended my colleague Arteen's session, he and Ganesh talked a lot about the do-it-yourself, right? So thinking about not only having to, not open tickets, but putting the power in your hand, using, I believe it's been talked about, the coach technology. So all of that we have in mind, delighting the end users. You probably get sick of me saying that term, but if I'm an auditor, I'm spending my time in AppZen. We don't want the time to be spent digging through expense reports. We want it to be easy for them, so they get excited when they see something from Coach pop up that says, oh, this is the 5th time that you've overridden this specific rule. Why don't you use DIY, change it right there, everything's right in the screen. So everything becomes much more efficient. And this is all the AI doing that for you, right? Yes, there's a human interaction of you changing it, making the decision, but that's the AI enabling that. And of course, I already kind of mentioned it, but when we think about shared service centers, to me, the number one thing that stands out is the language barrier. And when we hear that a lot of, we're receiving a lot more invoices from China, we're receiving a lot more invoices from Germany. Can you help with that? And this is, given my background, this is one of the big reasons why I myself came over to AppZen, because as you all know, if you're using a major expense software, you simply cannot look into the image. And I used to spend, with every implementation, all the change management was all around how do we train the managers or train the X person in the approval line to actually look at the image? And it's all about just training. Whereas now the AI steps in and does that for you. So no longer during implementation, if you have Concur or something, you don't have to train that anymore because the AI is going to look into it. And you don't have to hire X amount of people who can speak these languages, because a software like AppZen is going to do that translation. And if you haven't seen it yet, I'm happy to show you. But basically what happens is the expense report comes in, translates it, puts a translation over it, and highlights whatever models you have on. So I don't know, anyone in the room, has anyone used any of these these models or products in AppZen? And does anyone want to hear about how you have gained some efficiency gains from using it? Do we have any current customers using either the AP, yeah, go ahead.
And I think for our company, we were very strategic in our go live approach as we implemented. We did go live with North America first. It is a little easier because it was, one language to deal with. But,
right.
Our success rate with our global scale is really great.
And was it hard for people to adapt to it and adopt it at first? And kind of like how was adopting that?
I mean, it's a hard sell at first, right? Because there's a lot of blind faith that I think needs to go into it at first, because you can't always explain exactly how AI is going to work or how it determines the answers that it does. But, I shared this example earlier today with somebody I was speaking with. We have challenges in our organization where, if something gets a little complex or maybe a little gray, our teams were really failing to be able to come up with the solutions on their own. They weren't really able to dig into the details to find like a PO number that wasn't on the invoice.
Mm-hmm.
Within 3 weeks of going live with one of our company codes, AppZen picked the PO number out of our master data when it was not present on the invoice copy, solely based on the fact that a copier serial number was on the invoice, and it was also in the PO data. And it picked it, posted it, and it came into SAP and auto-posted without anybody ever touching it.
And how much time do you think like that type of behavior would have taken you before AppZen? Like 14 minutes down to 2 minutes, right?
Tremendous. I mean,
right.
It's been a lot of taking my team out of the more transactional and putting them more in strategic. And the areas that they're able to focus on now are areas that we were really struggling to keep up with previously, and now we're seeing improved results in those areas because the team does have the time to spend on them.
Yeah, that's great. And another thing that comes to mind too, that's a great point about AP, and I know you've probably heard a lot about it today, but it's one of those things that only gets better with time. The more it sees of a certain supplier, certain vendor, it's going to autonomously process it. Our goal, of course, is to process more and more invoices every day, right? We want your autonomous rate to go up. And so what she's experiencing at her company is only going to get stronger. We're only seeing her suppliers as we speak more and more, and that's really how AI gains its strength. And then, something on the expense side worth thinking about too, which is something where people like that have probably spent a lot of time. We have models such as aggregate models, right? So I think about efficiency with people who are using these expense management softwares who are spending all this time running reports to see, we have a tuition policy. Have they hit that limit yet? AppZen's AI does that. It's going to look at collectively over time whatever you want it to look at, and it's going to flag high risk the moment the person exceeds that. All these little time efficiency, cost efficiencies really start to add up. And then we start to think about, of course, compliance, right? And what is the cost of compliance? And you certainly don't want to ever know that, and you don't want to know it until, if someone comes knocking on your door saying, hey, you violated X, Y, and Z. And with the use of transformers, the patterns and correlations that you've heard about from Kunal at the beginning of the day, right? There's truly nothing more powerful than that, of something that keeps learning and is extremely forensic, looking for things that you probably, again, are spending a lot of time looking for today, right? And not only is it looking at expense reports, but on the AP side, we're going to flag if your supplier doesn't have all the details. We're going to stop the invoice, as she just said, if it knows it's a PO supplier, right? We know the rules and the compliance across your company, and it's not, and that being said, and the implementation is not these 2-year implementations that you're experiencing with other softwares. It's because we're sharing the knowledge from other customers, right? And so things like attendee verification. I know we had a few people come up to us today talking about attendee verification. So what that means on the expense side is we speak with a lot of pharma companies who have to list attendees and have very strict rules about how frequently a certain attendee can go out, how much they can spend. We even have gotten so deep because of this mastermind platform that you've probably heard about today, where we're doing what we call a three-way match on expense, where it's the attendee list is comparing to the guest count on the receipt, comparing to the check-in list, right, for this pharmaceutical company that we're speaking with, right? So using that mastermind model, we're able to kind of hone in on that. But again, the attendee verification on its own, right out of the box, what we're going to do is we're going to do a deep search on every single attendee, even if you say that they work for the Boston Celtics, right? We're going to disregard that, and we're going to do a deep search to verify who they actually are. So when we're talking to pharmaceutical companies, we're talking to higher ed, people who have a particular interest in not going out or not taking certain people out, we'll do that deep search for you and bring it to the forefront. So you can think about, when I ask about how much time have you spent doing this with an invoice, similar type of thing. How much time, if that is part of your daily work, are you spending deep searching attendees, for example? And then, of course, FAPIAO. If you have business across the world, FAPIAO is huge. We think about VAT reclaim, but FAPIAO in China specifically, right, that has multi-layers. We not only are going to look to make sure that the supplier is good, that the FAPIAO number is accurate, we also will do a deep search into the FAPIAO government agency. I'm forgetting off the top of my head what it's called. We're going to do a deep search into that to make sure it's a valid FAPIAO receipt as well. So again, I always think about how much time is that taking you and what type of compliance are you doing today around that. And of course, last but very not least, brought up is what is the return on investment, right? Well, let's start thinking about, yes, these technologies cost money, but what are you already spending money on, right? You're probably hiring employees. If you have a global shared service center, you want to fill the seats there. But if you start to introduce technologies such as AI, such as all these tools that we're kind of introducing to you today, and that you're talking with your colleagues about, we believe that, making life more efficient, honing in on the compliance, the return on investment naturally comes. And then if you think about invoicing, those invoices are paid back much quicker than they were before. You're hitting those deadlines for the discounts. All that kind of comes together to really give you that ROI that really is worth it in the end for this AI. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to open up with these few slides, but I really want to hear and kind of have you guys bounce back and forth. How are you, for those of you who do have a more global reach, how are you thinking about using either AppZen or AP service or expense audit, or if you've had success quite like that one over there, how have you all used it today, and how are you thinking about maybe implementing it? Especially after hearing everyone speak today. Has what ideas kind of struck? If you have any questions for me too. Yeah.
The two-way match for the HCP mill and attendees.
Oh, the one I just mentioned. Yeah. Yeah.
When is that going to take into place?
So that was using our mastermind platform. So what happened is a big pharmaceutical company loved our attendee verification, right? And they said, we want to use that, but we want to take it a step further, because we're finding that people will say these people attended, X, Y, and Z people attended, 5 people, but we only see 2 people on the receipt.
Exactly.
So that is, in any of these custom models that you're hearing from around, we can apply it to you all. So you could use it, you could turn it on, you just would have to work with our product team, right? So that's not an out-of-the-box model, because it takes our model and further does extra things. So like further automates, further does a deeper search, so that we would consider that more, I don't know the terminology, custom model, I guess. And so you could turn that on today if you wanted to, yeah.
If I was at work, I would. 'Cause this is
Yeah.
This is something that we have a lot of
Yeah,
issues
and on that note, like what I talk about a lot to our customers is the power of automation. I just had a whole session with a customer who's, yeah, we like this, but like, why AppZen, what type of automation can help with all these kind of challenges. And we can do things, and I'm sure in the other sessions you've kind of seen some of this, but we have customers who are saying, we have a blanket policy across the board. We don't allow non-itemized hotel receipts, right, to come through. And every time we see one, we reject it. Okay, then let's talk to AppZen and see how they can help, because AppZen has extreme accuracy with understanding an itemized hotel receipt. So what they have is they have us recognize, they have us flag that hotel itemization, and we will auto-reject it so that you don't even have to do that step for, let's say, a blanket policy. Another customer, anytime personal is marked on the expense report, they have us auto-generate an email. You can have us auto-generate a Slack that says, hey, we just saw you mark something $5.25 will be deducted from your paycheck. All these little steps that we are working, using our AI to automate and help the back end, help those shared service centers, help those offices that are spending way too much time doing those extra steps. So I think it's also kind of in relation to what that pharmaceutical company has done, they're thinking that next step. So of course we have these out-of-the-box things. If you meet with one of us, we'll tell you about the basic, models and all that. You can see that, but there's always this extra layer, this mastermind layer that we have that's going to allow you to go a step further. Did I see a hand? Yeah.
And I just talking about right now on the expense side of it. Have there been countries that are resistant, or no? Or we can roll it out anywhere?
Yeah, and I don't know if we have any CSMs in here. Yeah. So can you introduce yourself? Because you have an interesting role. Yeah.
I don't know any specific countries, but there are some countries where you're going to have collective bargaining agreements and you have a works council. So countries like Germany, it's not so much that it's not going to happen, it's that you have to get ahead of those things and make sure that you're proactively communicating it, because you could be ready to go live. I don't know if I need it. Do I need it? I speak all the time. So, you can be ready to go live, and then all of a sudden that works council is like, wait a minute, employees are going to be marked as a high risk. We don't like the way that sounds, because their job is to protect the employees. So it's making sure that you're working with those compliance teams in those specific countries. Germany's definitely on top of the list. And then if you have, in some industries, you're going to have your own collective bargaining agreements in those specific countries. Those are going to be the ones that you have to look at that and work with your internal compliance teams. That's usually when you're doing government supplying. So maybe you're selling bicycle tires, and for whatever reason the government uses bicycles for their employees. Those types of contracts are going to be the challenges, and it's mostly about proactively communicating.
And just as far as AppZen goes, we have a global reach. We have this pharmaceutical company, you can use your imagination, is based in Germany, right? So they, there's a lot going on across the globe using AppZen, and so to the extent that we really don't see change besides those kind of challenges that you might see, not so much in the U.S., but yeah, other countries. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah.
As you guys are building custom models for different customers, is there like a library of here's things that we've built so that other people know, hey, I need that custom model, or or do you have a model that you move custom models into standard models if they're more generally?
Yeah, and so that's kind of how a lot of our standard models were built. Of course, now the standard models are truly standard, but that's how models are built. And working with a small company like AppZen, we love the feedback we're learning from our customers. So to answer your question, yes, there's a library of those. And then your customer success manager, once you're live, they're aware of all these models that are being rolled out. And they will say, certain models won't be relevant to X, Y, and Z company. But hey, just so you know, this customer is doing this. And it's already been built. So as long as the parameter, we can kind of shift it over to you. So yeah, there is a library, and you'd be, there's a knowledge of that being shared for sure. Yeah. But yeah, the aggregate model I mentioned, that was grown from some company having that need. If happy hour, things like that. Did you have a question, Gordon?
I had no question, Katie. You're doing a fantastic job. Keep going.
I actually have a request because I recently transitioned to an offshore model on my team.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges I'm experiencing is because of the time difference, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so we work in a post-approval audit for expense.
Okay.
So when we send out requests for more information on those, we find ourselves hitting a wall because those links expire in 72 hours. And so with the time difference, we're finding ourselves running out of time. So the ask is if there's a way to consider extending those so that
the AppZen requests more information. Okay.
If we could extend
Denise,
those.
So you want to make a note of that?
Yeah, please extend those to 30 days or something.
Yeah. That's a good point. So someone requests more information right now in Dallas, but if someone has the day off and then they miss it or something like that.
They miss
see
it.
What you're saying.
Yeah, so we find ourselves chasing and so on. And so with the time difference and our team being offshore, it doesn't work out very well. So in the GPS environment, that's a challenge for us.
That's great. Yeah, that's great to know. That's a good point. Because I think otherwise, using a type like software just makes life easier, right? But then you do have to consider little things in a software like timing out and all of that. Great question.